Nadja, welcome to the stream. Welcome to YouTube. Thanks for joining us today.
So much, Colin. Really lovely to be here. I'm super excited for this chat today. As you said, we're gonna tackle a little bit of some interesting topics today. Just an FYI to quickly introduce myself. Colin made an intro already. I'm Nadia, head of business development at Lemlist, and the power that you kind of mentioned right now, I am on front line, so I'm both full sales cycle and I'm also leading our team. So I'm kind of a combo of a leader and the SDR itself. So I'm the one who can really kind of talk from both perspectives here, which is, I believe, where I can right now build, kind of bring most value from. Again, to all of our listeners out there, if you're in US, good morning to you all. Grab your coffee, get settled in. I'm really excited to have you all here. And to everybody watching us across the pond, sending love to my European family. Kudos to you for tuning in really on Friday night to kind of take a step towards holding your growth. Really excited to be here. As I said, I've tried to make this presentation as actionable as possible. So basically what we're going to cover today is both kind of the mindset needed of the SDR to build relationships and really become the best asset within the company itself. But also I'm going to show on a really concrete example how I personally am booking my demos, on a really concrete example, how I personally booked a recent one. So a lot of things coming up. Hopefully we're going to have a productive discussion.
Right on. And so where does it start when you start to think about, because you're like, it's so easy to just focus on the number, and it's all about, I'm looking into my sequencer tool, I'm looking at my list, and I'm saying, okay, I've got to add this many new people, I've got to send this many emails and make this many calls. And I find when I'm in that zone, and if I'm doing a cold call list, I like to just batch it all, and I'm going to sit on the phones and I'm going to crush my dials. If I'm doing my emails, I'm going to do my emails. It's so easy to forget that, like, I have this network. If I'm an SDR, I've got this network of individuals I've spoken to, individuals I've connected with. How do you remember? How do you think to, because I always get stuck on that. You get so sucked into Outreach or SalesLoft or whatever tool you're using. And it's like, okay, it almost gives me tunnel vision, that I'm like, okay, it's just this is the only way I can book my meeting, and there's nothing else that exists outside of this one single tool that sits in front of me. So how do you break out of that?
Great question. And when you actually start thinking like that, when you're tied to a sequencing tool or any tool at all in general, that's where you lose the power that is in you, which is makes you human, which is to build that relationship. So what is actually the difference between technology and human in the first place? It's the ability to be creative, to build the relationship and really find different approaches and different ways to approach either prospects or in general in life. So the way that I'm kind of thinking about it is the moment where you kind of separate yourself from the technology and you start thinking about, okay, how can I use my creativity and my own brain to to stand out, break away from the pattern. That's where you as an SDR become most valuable. And at the end, personal brand is where I believe is something that right now, if you want to stand out, there are like millions and millions of SDRs in the world. By building your LinkedIn brand or any brand at all, like if you're not targeting people who are on LinkedIn itself, maybe it's Instagram, maybe it's Facebook, by building your brand, that's where you right now start to become more credible. If nothing else, you're starting to be perceived as a thought leader and you really might make sure to stand out. Alongside with your question that you just asked me right now, one of the kind of core things that Lemlist and the way how we think about it is we always think about, think like think like a CEO, but act like an SDR. Meaning like CEOs are the ones who are, they're going to try and do their best to keep the company running. That's their core mission. So when they go aside of that, they're going to do everything possible. They're going to come up with the new ideas. They're going to come up with the new sources of revenue, new channels, completely breaking outside of the box. So at that moment, when you actually make this happen and you make this switch in mindset, you start thinking how you can stand out and create more of that top of funnel buzz around you as an SDR to generate more inbound leads to yourself without having to rely really on marketing. So about a month ago, Simon, my SDR, and I, we actually really, we started expanding into the US. Our outbound was sorely focused so far on European market. So going from there, we actually realized that, okay, one Serbian, one French attacking US market, going after hundreds of sales loft, outreach, sales reps. We're going to, and they're multi-million-dollar marketing campaigns. Remember, we are bootstrapped. So meaning that we didn't raise any funds. We're not spending any money on ads. We just refused $30 million investments and decided to stay bootstrapped. So we're right now going these incredible competitors. And if we're going to do only cold emailing, cold calling, and LinkedIn messaging, there's not going to be enough of a difference for us. So we actually decided to kind of create our own YouTube channel and document our entire journey for our audience to see, as these are the things that they're also facing and pain points that they're doing. So right now we're kind of documenting their entire thing for the world. And that's the way that we kind of found a way to stand out.
Very cool. And I know I mentioned sales loft and outreach. It was just sort of top of mind. But obviously Lemlist is a tool just like this, but you go quite a bit deeper in terms of like helping warm up domains, managing email deliverability, sending follow-ups, et cetera, all the usual stuff. But I felt it just sort of came out and I was like, wait a minute, catch up, brain. Have a drink of coffee and think about this. Apologies for bringing up competitors on your talk here, but I do like the focus on like Lemlist goes quite a bit deeper, because I think if anybody's been an SDR for a while, they've probably ran into email deliverability problems, whether you know it or not. I know way more than I would care to know about how email works because we've gone through all those problems.
Yes, definitely. So when you think about it at the end, when you start sending emails, all of the SDRs, they're putting so much effort into personalizing their emails, into doing the research, into making their emails stand out, doing everything possible to really catch the attention of the reader. And what happens is that those emails end up landing in spam, and those emails are never read. So your open rates, if they're below 50%, you immediately know that you have problems with your deliverability. And that's where you kind of start thinking, okay, I need to now send more and more and more, because you're still just limiting the number of people that you're in general reaching. And that's where kind of Lemlist started with. We built this community with more than 15,000 members right now. And we literally noticed that typically when you start warming up your email domain to ensure that you're not going to spam, you sending these emails to your friends, to your colleagues, and you're just like doing all of this manual work that can be completely automated. So we took our community, 15,000 members, and we took all of our customers, and we created this thing called Lemwarm, which is actually a way for you to right now automatically warm up your domains by using our own customers. So basically, if I were right now to start using Lemlist, I would be sending emails to you who you were using Lemwarm. And basically what will happen is that our customers amongst themselves will be sending emails on the back end to each other. They're going to be automatically replying to those emails in a thread, removing them from spam, marking them as important. And basically you're joining this incredible network of real life domains who are actively sending emails, who are not newly created email addresses. And it literally pushes your deliverability to the top.
I literally took a break from what we were talking about and I sent this to one of our people because I'm like, I know we've been struggling with this. We tried to build a bot, some Python script, I think, that connected into a bunch of inboxes a long time ago to try this, and it went poorly. It actually just tanked everything. So I think there's some special sauce in what you're doing. Super, super interesting because I mean, yeah, I think we've all had those SDRs that you look and it's like, okay, what you are sending looks reasonable, but your results are not happening. And you check their calls and their calls are good. You check their emails are good. And you're like, what is going wrong? And then you check the deliverability and it's like, oh, you can't send emails. Oh, well, it's like, trying to drive your car without gas.
Exactly. And there are so many things that are actually going to deliverability issues and deliverability in general that affects it. It's not only the email warm up and the way that you warm up your email. It's not the way that you're also taking care of your email copy. It's so much more than that. It's also the tool that you're using. So if you're able to right now set up your own custom tracking domain, and I'm going technical right now, I don't want to kind of bother the listeners right now with these details, but in general, there are so many things that actually right now affect deliverability. And as we are progressing, we're going to see so much more that right now people are, we saw how LinkedIn right now is getting basically is limiting a lot of users when it comes to number of connections they can send, but it's
Mhm.
the same thing is happening with the emails. So email providers right now are becoming more aggressive when it comes to spam protection. So we as an SDR, we really need to kind of make, actually as sales leaders, we need to make sure that within our tech stack, we are enabling our SDRs when they're doing their outreach, this outreach is actually landing in primary inbox.
Totally. I mean, I think, when we started looking at this like 5 years ago, 6 years ago, it used to just be if you're only sending cold emails, deliverability was an issue. And if you were on the parent domain, you're probably okay. And then there have been, I think, maybe 3 to 4 major changes in terms of things you need to authenticate, the way that, certain like email providers handle incoming mail, and the way that their sort of spam filtering systems work, that now it's gone from something that just, a few people needed to worry about. Like you only needed to worry if you were going that really high velocity approach. And now it seems like something that's relevant to just about everybody.
Definitely relevant to everybody, even companies that are sending like 50 emails per day, if they're not setting up their sequencing tools properly and their own setup, it's going to affect them. And we often, what we see is that companies with this great track record that existing for like 20 years plus, they think because of their credible company right now, their domains are probably the best ones. But actually the reality is, in these cases, most cases are that these email addresses are really in a poor shape, and that's where the deliverability needs to come in place.
And I think this sort of, it just builds on what you were saying earlier, that if you're so focused, if you're just sucked into your Lemlist, if you're in your sales engagement platform and you're not thinking about creatively, that's the word, outside, of that box, you're kind of toast. Because if you do run into something like this, where suddenly your emails aren't going through at quite the rates, and you're sitting there like, okay, well, what do I do now? If you haven't been building that network, if you haven't been focusing on building yourself up as that sort of mini thought leader, if you don't have any awareness on LinkedIn, it's a cold start. Whereas I think what you were saying is earlier is like, warm it up and start going, because eventually that's going to start to, be a consistent source of meetings for you.
Exactly. And another thing is, whenever we hear, like, I'm constantly talking to sales leaders that come to me and tell me, yeah, I'm not doing so much cold emailing. I don't think it's working. It's not working. It's not working. The minute that I ask them, what are your open rates? Did you ever send at any point any cold emailing campaign? And they tell me, yes, I've sent some. Okay, can you please let me know what are your open rates? Their open rates are always around maximum 30%. So no wonder that your then cold emailing is not working, because you're not even reaching the people that you're reaching, and not to even start with the personalization and the copy.
Mm-hmm. In some ways, it like we're looking at reply rates all wrong, right? Like it's almost, I think from day one, in Aaron, we just talked about it, Aaron's book, it was, you look at like a 9% reply rate. And I think that was of 9% of everybody that was sent an email replied back. Right. But now with, email filters and things like that, you almost need to be looking at like, of the percentage of people that opened it, the percentage of people that we think saw your email, because you're not always going to get the mail systems loading that little tracking pixel that will tell you. That's something that's changed quite a bit recently. You almost need to look at it as like a percentage of people that replied that actually received an email.
Exactly. And there's also, when you think about the stats of the campaigns itself, open rates, yes, typically, like, you will see on LinkedIn thought leaders saying that no, open rates really don't matter. The only thing that matters is the reply rate. But at the end, open rates are the ones showing you your deliverability. So this is definitely an important aspect. If it's below, it can be improved, first of all. Second, or your data list, basically the list that you have with your contacts, maybe might not be clean. However, the reply rates as well, you might get positive responses, you might get negative ones. So is this really the stat that you want to track? That's why at Lemlist we currently have the interested stat, would basically, you would, every time that you actually get a demo booked or you get a positive reply, that's where you would mark these leads as interested, and that's what you're tracking actually, not the replies, not the reopen rates. It's actually what drives business your way, basically.
Super interesting. We history of predictable revenue, we started like a Lemlist competitor years ago, and just we used it internally, and we never sort of built it out. And we had this like 3 categories of, you put your templates, we forced everybody to put their templates into 3 categories, and it was like positive, neutral, and negative templates. And just by clicking on a template from there, we were tricking the SDRs into automatically classifying their messages as positive, neutral, negative.
Well, we might steal your idea.
I'll license it to you. You can look at, you have the old code for $1, just so I can say we sold it. I'm curious because, you know, I mentioned at the beginning of this, we wanted to double click on, you know, you're somebody that's actually practicing in sales, and I'm certainly not, especially on a regular basis. So I'm curious if there's anything, what do you wish that you knew when you started out in sales? Like, what do you know now that you, wish you knew when you were starting?
Great question, and kind of what I wanted to cover today as well with you. So kind of let's kind of think about the question first. What is, how did I kind of come from, you know, me, Serbian woman, I'm very young, by the way, going from Serbia right now to speaking to a predictable revenue webinar. How did this happen? Like me competing against thousands and thousands of different SDRs in the world. And what I would love to kind of pinpoint down is the, first of all, importance of building the brand. And I cannot emphasize this enough. Right now at my sales team at Lemlist, all of us currently have their own KPIs for LinkedIn as a part of our sales team's KPIs. All of us are posting. We are getting more than 1 million views per month, every month, every sales rep, and everybody starts at the beginning, obviously. So they start with like having 4, 5, 6 likes, and then gradually they increase. But it doesn't take so much time. So Simon, one of my SDRs, recently joined in September. We, from there on, today, he's literally reaching millions of people worldwide. However, the importance of this LinkedIn brand is that it generated for our team not only brand awareness, and it didn't only align us with our marketing team, because we finally were able to understand how they're thinking, how they're working. It enabled us to kind of think outside of the box. And then when you get people talking to you on LinkedIn, you start thinking, okay, maybe I shouldn't be stuck on my sequence. Let's just talk to people. Let's just reach out to them. I saw this comment. Let me send them a message. That's where you right now, you're in a position where you're seeing you're helping people. You're seeing that you're really building that brand and buzz around you. So you start talking to them, and you kind of free your mind from being stuck on the sequencing, on cold calling, on cold emailing. And it, first of all, gives you so much value. So building a LinkedIn brand, or any brand, if you're on Instagram, Facebook, it doesn't matter depending on your ICP. But that was the first thing that I wished I knew earlier, because then I would have started it earlier. Second thing that I did make a mistake in the beginning was definitely having can you believe it? Yes.
How dare you?
How dare I? So obviously when I started off in sales, I switched for marketing. So I obviously had no idea what I'm about to do. So I was kind of playing around, going with my gut feeling. First mistake, I didn't immediately start watching predictable revenue webinars, first of all. So taking that step where you yourself learn by yourself, and not wait for your managers, leaders, etc., to kind of give it to you on the plate. That's where you stand out, and that's where it makes a difference for you. And then second of all, I really started immediately going with a typical approach, which is spray and pray, you know, starting to shoot a lot of emails, just trying to get as many demos booked as possible by reaching out to as many people as I could, without actually realizing that this is not the approach that actually converts best, and that by building relationships, you're positioning yourself in a way that you're not only going to get that demo booked or deal signed, you're building a relationship that's going to last for a lifetime. So you're developing your network. You're able to drive so much more from that one relationship, such as intros, such as seeking advice, you know, possibly getting job referrals. There's so much more that you can right now drive from that relationship that is not strictly revenue based, I would say. And then again, obviously the conversions go up. You start to think that all of the people that we are reaching out to are human beings. So even if you're on a C level, that's also was one of the mistakes that I made. If you're a C level and you're an SDR, you immediately put yourself in that lower position where you think, okay, I'm not worried, I'm scared, I'm gonna, I don't know how to approach this guy. Fact is, these are all human. We can all talk in the same way. And again, this is also something that for me was really kind of mind blowing. When you put yourself in a position that you're helping somebody, you're not bothering them, you're not apologizing for bothering them, you're not pinging them and pulling their arms. You're thinking, okay, this guy have this problem, this is how I can help solve it. That's way your mindset changes, and that's how you start approaching people differently. And these are all the kind of small things that I've learned. Not so much actionable right now what I'm sharing, but I'm trying my best.
I mean, I really liked the piece that you mentioned about, I think my takeaway was it's a long game. The second piece you mentioned about thinking about people and thinking about building connections and building your network. And I'm trying to blank on his name right now, but I'll come back to it. I'll see if I can find the episode. But we were talking about, this is a bit of a tangent. We were talking about how to hire a sales leader, right? And his recommendation was hire somebody that's familiar, that's done a similar, the preference is always similar deal size, deal flow, deal structure. So if it's SMB, you're selling to SMB with like a 2-call close, SMB with 2-call close with like a, 15 to 50K, annual deal size. Somebody that's familiar with that sales motion, super valuable. Somebody that's familiar with that sales motion and the customer base, exceptionally valuable. As a sales, I think the logic follows for somebody who's looking for the next sales role, whether you're an SDR trying to get an AE or an AE trying to get a sales management position. That if you've been, and this is how I think it becomes actionable, is if you're a sales development rep, zoom out, look at your career, right? And if you think the next logical step is somebody is selling to a similar audience, then suddenly building your network isn't just something you're doing for now, it's something you're doing for your entire career. It's not just going to help you on this commission check. It's going to help you on that commission check 18 months down the road where you might be a little bit flat and you're trying to like build a couple of meetings, or you might be at another company and you're trying to drum up some sales now instead of book some meetings. And so to me, zooming out, and it's realizing it's the long game, because everything you're doing now is going to make you much more valuable for the next role, whether it's internally within your company or it's externally at another company, or it's just selfishly for your next paycheck 12 months down the road. If you plan on staying in this role for a while, like it builds and builds and builds. But I think your advice is super actionable. It just requires you to zoom out and realize that this is a profitable activity, no matter what way you look at it.
For sure. And there's so many things that right now, from the perspective of the sales leader, right now when we're often like SDRs are perceived as undervalued a bit in the organizations. And the fact is, they're the ones who are actually on the first lines talking to the customers. They're the ones who are establishing this relationship with their customers. They're the ones setting up the scene, and they're buying experience. And again, buyers today, they determine whether they're going to buy or not, strictly depending on how their buying experience looked like in the past. So if you, as an SDR, build that first touch, that first relationship that is properly built, let alone it's going to be good for your account executives and your sales leaders who are going to basically took it over. But for you as an SDR, you're going to be representing the company. And at the end, you're going to have that relationship to pull back in the future. And just, you're going to have such a great network afterwards that it's going to be enabling you to just expand so much deeper.
Mm-hmm. It was a really, I totally agree. And thanks for building on that. As you were making your third comment, before I jumped in, you were talking about how, as CEOs and, these senior people they're real people. And I was like, yeah, like I remember this. And then my brain went, oh, you're also like CEO right now as well. I can attest, I am a real person. And I'm pretty much the same jackass that I was when I started off in sales. But I remember having that sort of cold call fear of calling owners and calling CEOs. from back then, I remember, I feel like my experience with the higher you go, the nicer people got. Is this something that resonates with you?
Completely. And personally, when I kind of transitioned into a higher role, I would say the moment I've done that, the less messages I started receiving.
Hmm.
So fear that I see happening, that people are often SDRs, they're often going to the other SDRs, to the lower hierarchy bottom up approach, and they're so afraid to actually reach out to C level that you start getting less emails than you should be getting in that position. And again, the approach is completely different. So when I was in my SDR role previously, the types of messages that I was receiving were quite more genuine, more normal, I would say, more friendly, the types of messages that I will respond to. Today, I'm receiving, as I'm sure you are as well, a lot of spammy, generic, really unpersonalized, and I would say scared messages where they're trying to personalize, but it's more coming from a position of fear than from a position, okay, I can help you. Let's find the common ground. Let's see if we can relate. And that's where I feel a lot of deals are getting lost as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I remember having that fear, and now I think back and I'm like, how do you get rid of that fear, right? I think for me, it eventually went away, but I'm also not cold calling. I bet you if I picked up the phone, I'd probably have that for the first, couple of calls. So how did you, like, you've obviously sort of leveled up, and it doesn't seem to impact you that much anymore. What was your journey there like?
I would say that, okay, now I'm coming back to the same thing that I said in the beginning, but I would say for me, the really positioning yourself as a thought leader is where you right now start to be perceived as a thought leader, and eventually you start to believe it. So when
Mhm.
you're in phase where you're getting approached by others, and that's why building a brand is important. You connect with those types of people that you want to connect with in the first place. You start to kind of gain trust in yourself, and it takes practice as well. It takes time, as you said, like it's in the beginning. If you're an SDR, it's normal to be scared. It's normal to not have the same energy and same confidence that you would have later on, but it's also the mentality of the SDR. Not everybody was built for sales. I have my teammate Irina, who just joined us a couple of months ago, and the first time that she did the practice demo, she literally cried, which was the moment where you feel, okay, this is a newly created SDR who has this fear. How can we help overcome that? And I feel it's really dependent on the managers and on the sales leaders how you handle these types of things. So obviously, if you're going to be if you're going to have your SDRs or your SDR manager coming to you and then telling you that you need to step up and you're going to get fired, that's not the position where you want to be in when you're starting off as an SDR,
Mhm.
anytime actually. So like really having that confidence from your manager is what I think also sets some parts aside.
Right on. I just finished reading this book yesterday that you reminded me of when you were talking there, by Katie Milkman. It's called How to Change, and they were talking about the how you sort of got more, how individuals in specific roles got more confident. And as I was listening to it, I was thinking about SDRs, right, and salespeople, just because it's definitely a confidence issue, or at least it certainly was for me in the early days. There's so many things that I would do a whole lot differently just because I'm more confident. I don't think I'm any better at sales than I was, a few years ago. I might know a few more people, but there's certainly a whole lot more confidence. And one of the things they talked about was, in terms of like building confidence, was advice groups. Was when you give somebody else advice, you're more likely to follow that advice, and then you start believing that. And I can say, just from personal experience, having run a podcast of 100, interviewing 150 sales leaders, at the very beginning, I didn't know what the hell I was doing. I didn't know how to podcast. And I was interviewing all of these people. Like, I'd been in sales for 10 years and I was interviewing all these people. And I'm like, I have no business being on this podcast. Like, I don't know anything. And 150 episodes later, I'm a very different person when it comes to that. I've had a bunch of different conversations. So I'm curious, does any of that resonate with you? You starting a podcast next?
Our YouTube channel has just hit off. It's been and as I said, like this is kind of where I feel the most important part in general, like when you're an SDR, is really to kind of think outside of the box and try to find your own approach, your own voice. one of the ways that we've done that, me and Simon, is building this YouTube channel, and we just hit it off. It's gonna be like a challenge for us, definitely. I'm not a YouTuber, let's be fair here. So I didn't have even a YouTube app about a month ago until I actually started my YouTube. So this is something where I'm completely getting kind of out of my comfort zone. But this is kind of what you do to actually be able to grow, and to really learn and improve yourself as a person at the end.
Right on. And we were talking about building confidence, and obviously, it's super helpful to have that confidence, but that confidence, unless you put it into action in terms of in turn it into booking meetings, doesn't really, I mean, it's helpful. It's obviously helpful, but in terms of on your commission check, it doesn't mean anything. I know I want to talk to you a little bit about how you book demos, and we were going to talk maybe a little bit about combo prospecting. So first, maybe tell us about what is combo prospecting, and then how does it translate into booking demos?
We had a plan to kind of right now for our today's talk to kind of do a little bit of a presentation, but we kind of went over our goals. So I'm gonna actually just go straight. Give me a second. I want to share my screen here if possible. So
Yep.
kind of walk you, because we're not going to have a lot of time for this. So I'm going to kind of walk you through the way that I personally kind of book my demos. And I'm going to use an example of a demo that we recently booked with a unicorn company, and why right now, again, building LinkedIn brand is really important. So what happened when we started off at Lemlist is we were kind of thinking, okay, we need to you're always tempted to scale your outreach. So what you do is you tend to kind of start with personalization, but then you stray away and then you start scaling, and then it goes completely sideways. I think the biggest problem when you start personalizing and sending out LinkedIn or email messages is that you start immediately thinking how to scale without really thinking about your ICP and how to properly connect with them.
Mm-hmm.
So on an example that I recently had, one of my demos actually we are getting a lot of demos booked through our LinkedIn posts. So what we've done is I've actually created a cold emailing, I've created a LinkedIn post with a cold emailing hub that literally featured hundreds of our sequences that our own customers wrote that generated incredible results. And this post itself generated so much engagement that it got 400 really highly qualified ICPs coming to my inbox in DM, directly messaging me, asking for the access to this hub. One of these people that came to me was an SDR from Deal, a really amazing company that I've been following for a long time now. They've managed to grow 20xing their revenue in the last year, going to 2 rounds of funding, just became unicorn about a month ago. And I've been following this company, and obviously right now this is kind of the mindset of the SDR. When you see somebody growing rapidly, you want to go ahead and shoot them a message ASAP to get a demo booked and actually bring in the client to the company. However, at that moment, before we started talking, I didn't have anything relevant to really tie myself as the reason that I'm reaching out. So I kind of laid low and I waited for a kind of perfect opportunity to actually approach this person. So the moment that Charles, this amazing SDR, came to me, he asked for the access to the cold emailing hub. And what typically happens is that SDRs, when they see this highly qualified ICP that is, strictly within your audience, I see Sarah is joining. Probably she's going to cut us off here.
No, keep going.
But in general, typically what SDRs tend to do is they immediately go for the pitch, and they start, okay, this is what can help you with, what it is that you're struggling with. Oh, we can help with our product. So Charles actually shared that his problem was writing genuine cold emails, which is actually something that Lemlist helps solve. So at the end, I didn't go straight away with an ask. I kind of laid low. I started building the relationship. And the way that I did it is that we actually really talked to our ICP in a way that you would be talking to a human being and your friend. I like to, when I'm coaching my team, I always think about it, think about outbound as if it's like dating. So if you like somebody, you wouldn't go ahead straight to them and ask them, hey, you want to go out? You would ask them at the end, okay, you would first start to build that relationship, find the common ground, find the common interest. And only when the relationship is actually built, you would go with an ask, which is, take a look at my product, or let's go out. So the moment that Charles actually started talking to me, I didn't go straight away with an ask. I actually started kind of talking to him genuinely, asking questions that were addressing his points, and it gave me room to actually be able to right now go ahead and build that relationship, address his own pains. And when I say like leading with value in general, that term is so much mentioned so often that I feel like right now SDRs are just starting to shove company content down prospects throats. They're just like sending it without even being asked if they wanted to see that. So what does leading with value actually means? It means that right now you're discovering through your conversation what your ICP's pain actually is and how you can help solve it. And it doesn't have to be throughout your product. It can be Charles shared that he's struggling with some lead gen part of his sequence. So I helped him out with this part. And eventually we ended up talking so that we built this relationship where I was now able to ask for an intro to their head of sales, which he obviously made. After the intro was made, now Ilana, who I reach out to, she tells me that she already has been following my content. She's already like following me on LinkedIn, which is right now the importance of LinkedIn brand and engaging with them in that way as well. She points me straight away to their SDR manager. We hop on a call. We do an incredible demo. We follow up afterwards, and I follow up with them with a personalized video. So this is me being a full sales cycle where I kind of go through all of the segments of the sales process, and where you see that you right now need to kind of extend that relationship throughout the journey. So I ended up like then following up with a personalized video using Drift and Lemlist at the end. What happened is that at the end, this deal didn't go through. Deal actually was a company that had a really strong relationship with their own vendor, and even though they did like Lemlist and they did see which pains they can help solve it, they decided to stay with the current vendor just because of the relationship. And this is kind of goes to prove why relationship at the end has much more longer lasting effect than just you sending out an email straight away.
Super helpful. I really like and I'm trying to bring it to a close here because we've got about 2 more minutes, and so I do want to get to maybe any key takeaways, if you wanted to highlight a couple ideas, because there's only so much information we can all grasp. And I'm sure, if people are in YouTube, they're clicking in, they're clicking away, they're checking their email, they're maybe hitting a couple of things in Lemlist to, respond and send a couple of dials. So what would be some highlights, some things, some ideas that you would highlight from our conversation now, just as like nice tight reminders?
Definitely. So first of all, from where we started, if you're an SDR or a sales leader, take a look at your deliverability, because if that's not in proper place, it's all things are going to go sideways. But from a kind of a personal perspective, if you're an SDR, really take ownership of your own growth and take ownership of your own career path by focusing on your own brand and how you can right now develop your network. When you're reaching out to people, really make sure that you're qualifying well, that your messages are not feeling generic, that you're really building that friendly relationship with your prospects. Do not focus on volume. Try to build in any way possible your credibility, and then do something to really stand out, because today millions and millions of SDRs are targeting the same ICP as you are. So do not kind of stick with that template that your manager gave to you. Do not stick with the workflow that manager gave to you. Do your job, but think outside of that and try to think how you personally can scale it for your own good at the end.
So number one advice as a sales manager is ignore your sales manager. This is what I'm hearing.
I would say so. That's every single day.
Perfect. With that, let me add back into the conversation Sarah, one of our sales development managers.
Yeah.
What do you think about that?
I actually love that. That's so true. And it's something that I do try to encourage my people to do, is like, yes, we have what we've given you that is like theoretically a more tried and true method, but in reality, there's no such thing in outbound because it changes so frequently. So thinking outside of the box, going and learning from webinars like these, listening to people like you, Nadja, and then taking the idea and being like, okay, how can I apply this to my ICP, my, product, service, whatever, and then trying to develop your own voice, your own strategies from there is so important. That thing is the thing that sets apart the top performers from the low performers. It's not doing what your manager tells you and doing it like doing more. So your manager tells you to do 100 calls and you do 200 of those same calls isn't really the thing that's going to set you apart. But if you're doing those 100 calls that you're supposed to do, so you're playing by the rules and then you're breaking them and you're going off and find something else, that is what really sets apart great SDRs.
And I love to be challenged and I love to be proved wrong. So whenever that happens, like you as the manager, you want to be proven wrong, because if you're wrong, you want that to be pointed out to you as soon as
so that you can pivot to that new strategy that somebody's found. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, couldn't agree more.
But you're never wrong, Sarah.
Sure.
Cool. Nadja, thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate it. If people want to get in touch with you, or if they're, if they want to find out more about this Lemlist thing, about the email deliverability, the domain warming up piece, what's the best way for them to get in touch to find out?
My LinkedIn is always the kind of the easiest way for you to reach out, or reach us out on Lemlist website. Our support team is there for you all the time. But again, my LinkedIn profile, I think, is the safest bet, as I'm constantly active there. So feel free to connect with me. I'm always happy to help and kind of give you insights both on LinkedIn profile branding and also on cold emailing part and how to do and build relationships properly.